Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. My name is Paul Harris and I am President of the City Club's Board of Directors. I'm very pleased to introduce today's speaker, the Honorable Marcy Kaptur, representative of Ohio's 9th Congressional District. Congresswoman Kaptur comes to the City Club podium today in the midst of her 16th term in the House. She has a longer tenure, which is known as seniority in the House world, than any other woman in the House, and ranks 17th in seniority among the 435 members of the House. A bit about Congresswoman Kaptur's background. She was born in Toledo, Ohio. She graduated from St. Ursula Academy and thereafter became the first member of her family to go to college, attending the University of Wisconsin. After graduating from Wisconsin, she earned a master's degree in urban planning from the University of Michigan. She worked as an urban planner, including in Toledo and Chicago, and later served as a domestic policy advisor to President Carter. While pursuing a doctorate in urban planning and development finance at MIT in the early 1980s, Congresswoman Kaptur was recruited by the Lucas County Democratic Party to run for Congress. Well, she won and began her over 30 years and still running service in the House. Now, the 9th Congressional District that our speaker serves stretches 141 miles along Lake Erie. The district includes parts of Cuyahoga, Erie, Lorain, Lucas, and Ottawa counties in Ohio. As you will see when studying a map, if you want to travel the district without leaving the district, you've got to do so by boat. Now, the district is a diverse one that includes densely populated areas, a national wildlife refuge, auto parts factories, aerospace facilities, a very famous amusement park, and of course the lake. Congresswoman Kaptur serves as a ranking member on the Subcommittee on Energy and Water Development and is the first Democratic woman to serve on the Defense Subcommittee. She also serves on the Financial Services Subcommittee and formerly served on the Banking Committee and Budget Committee. Although a GovTrack analysis refers to the Congresswoman as a, quote, rank-and-file Democrat, close quote, she has displayed independent thinking as a representative. Earlier this year, she spoke out on the House floor against the President's proposal to control Social Security cost increases by modifying the inflation adjustment formula. She has voted in favor of proposals to restrict access to abortion, and she has been a staunch advocate of veterans' issues that have certainly transcended party politics. A few years ago, Congresswoman Kaptur introduced a bill to repeal provisions of the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, sometimes referred to as GLEBA in the financial services world. Now, I can't resist the temptation to note the irony of a bank executive like me introducing her today at the City Club of Cleveland, but I do so with great respect for an Ohioan who has served and continues to serve her district, state, and country nobly. So I present to you on behalf of the City Club of Cleveland, the Honorable Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Paul, thank you so very much, and I am just so happy to be here with all of you today. Imagine if someone sent out an invitation and they said that you were going to be the speaker, and you had the opportunity that people actually showed up to hear what you had to say. It's just great. It's just wonderful. And I want to thank Dan and the City Club of Cleveland. Truly, it is an honor to be able to speak with you today at the Citadel of Free Speech, especially in the year of its centenary, your centennial anniversary. That is quite an accomplishment, not just for Cleveland, but for the whole country. So I want to thank you and the board and everyone who has made this moment possible. I want to thank everyone who worked on this program, including Carrie Miller, and everyone who has taken time from their busy day to join us today. You are a caring group of citizens, not just for this region, but for our country and our shared future. Thank you for being patriotic Americans and for sharing this moment today. The topic that I have been delivered is the state of the 9th Congressional District. And I intend to talk about that following in the footsteps of my dear colleague, Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, who delivered the state of the 11th District speech here in May. I'm not going to take the full time, I hope, with prepared remarks and look forward to fielding as many questions as you can throw. But let me begin by recalling for you the words of Daniel Webster that are arrayed above the Speaker's rostrum in the U.S. House of Representatives. They read, "Let us develop the resources of our land, call forth its powers, build up its institutions, promote all its great interests, and see whether we, in our day and generation, may not perform something worthy to be remembered." I say those words every day. So let me ask you to join me for a glimpse of our emerald and sapphire coast that is home to the new 9th Congressional District. And let's start just east of where it begins, anchoring in at the just restored Edgewater Beach with the most striking view of the Cleveland skyline. Let us then traverse westward toward Lorraine's lakefront industrial heritage as we pass through Lakewood and then river and then bay and into Avon Lake, and move through westward to Vermilion and its snug harbors, and then westward more to Sandusky's Four Season water parks near Cedar Point. You are about the midpoint in the district at that juncture. And then we move west again to Port Clinton as you boat north to all of the Lake Erie Islands and the Perry Monument, where this year we will have commemorations of the War of 1812, the Battle of Lake Erie, which made possible the settlement of this great nation as America's first frontier, the Northwest Territory. But then you proceed west again through Cedar Point and Ottawa National Wildlife Refuges, the only national wildlife refuges in our state, with incomparable recreation and birding opportunities, along with a brand new National Visitor Center with geothermal and solar-powered energy facilities. That is a really special place, the Lake Erie marshlands, centered on 10,000 acres of lakeshore that can sustain humans and eagles alike. And of course, our boating community is the second largest in the nation. We have a thriving maritime industry and a maritime ecosystem that demands our attention. But we need to proceed further west yet as we try to reach the Maumee River, the largest tributary in the Great Lakes, pouring in 10% of the lake's fresh water and draining the largest watershed in the entire Great Lakes region. That is the 9th Congressional District. Now, it has been gerrymandered politically, the 9th Congressional District, but it is a freshwater kingdom. I actually have more water in the district than land. And of course, we know that the Republicans in Columbus didn't intend to create such a wonderful district. Their goal was entirely self-serving, to preserve a Republican majority in the House of Representatives. In a state that votes 50-50 in presidential elections, we have a congressional delegation comprised of 4 Democrats and 12 Republicans. Now, nevertheless, the 9th Congressional District also happens to be the most sustainable place on earth. Seriously, think about it. Having just returned from parched California, reviewing water shortages in my capacity as ranking member on the Energy and Water Subcommittee, touring places where forest fires grow more fierce with each passing year, and congestion and water conservation mark daily life from Los Angeles to San Francisco, I see more and more Americans weighing a recalibration of lifestyles aimed at quality of life. They want to sustain precious ecosystems that are better cared for the generations of the future. Our coast offers beauty, diversity, culture, opportunity, and yes, sustainability. In fact, there is no place else on earth, and I've challenged all the scientists at the USGS and all these experts in world ecosystems, there is no place else on earth where this much fresh water meets this much arable land. It simply doesn't exist. Our Great Lakes hold 20% of the world's fresh surface water and 90% of the fresh surface water in our country. Lake Erie is the most biologically abundant of our lakes, with more fish and more fauna than all the other lakes combined. As U.S. population increases, from the mid-20th century we were at 146 million. Today we're at 310 million. By 2050 we're projected to be at 500 million in this country. People will be looking for places to live that are comfortable and fresh water rich. But we have to protect this vital resource from all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that includes invasive species and toxic algae. It also includes a Republican majority in the current Congress in the House that wants to cut over 80% of the funding for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, so vital to life here. That is why I have invited also to help us with visioning our ecosystem here, the director of the U.S. National Park Service, which spends most of its money west of the Mississippi River, to our region, to take a look at the Cuyahoga National Park, all the way west to the Battle of Fallen Timbers in Lucas County, and to inquire about better interpretation that we could do as a nation to this region that is truly America's first frontier, the Northwest Territory. We have to work in partnership across this water-abundant region and ecosystem, this precious, precious ecosystem, and present it to the nation no different than do those who live near the Redwoods or Denali or Yosemite. We have much to offer as well. The future surely belongs to us, but we have to take some wise steps to capture it. And all of you are a part of building that future. A lot of people and institutions are making big bets on our region. They see the potential for growth here. The automobile industry, rescued from oblivion by President Obama to his everlasting credit, has invested literally hundreds of millions of dollars in our region and in our 9th district. We are America's propulsion center from the inside out, from Brook Park, NASA, to GM, Ford, and Chrysler arrayed in every county that I represent and all of their parts producers. Chrysler has made a huge capital investment in its Toledo operations and plans to add 1,000 workers at the Jeep plant. It is the largest Chrysler production facility on our continent, and they are hiring. General Motors, also hiring, has made major investments at its stamping plant in Parma and its transmission plant in Toledo, and they are world-class facilities. And Ford has staked its future on the success of the EcoBoost engine that will be made here at the Cleveland engine plant. We can say it's the Brook Park Boost. We must view ourselves as America's transportation aorta and build it forward at every juncture. Now, let me touch on another sector, health. You might have noticed the recent article in the Plain Dealer that Cleveland recently surpassed Minneapolis as the #1 spot in America for venture capital investment in the health sector. $226 million last year alone. The combined employment and medical schools and research facilities across northern Ohio are not just a national asset, they are a global asset, worth building up and promoting further. There is a buzz around Cleveland, a palpable sense of energy and excitement that bodes well for the future. Yet we know a lot of people are still hurting here. Our region is still climbing out of a hole that was created by the Great Recession. Our region has taken some very heavy hits in recent years, surely in the 9th District. We are a region, however, that is a free enterprise region. And we are competing against regions that really aren't. We must build our way forward in the private market, and we are not a state capital. We are not a federal encampment. We don't have any major cushions here that absorb those who are kicked out of private employment. So when the U.S. economy gets sick, we get pneumonia. Ohio lost more than 400,000 manufacturing jobs, 40% of its total manufacturing base between 1990 and 2009. That is a staggering statistic. And of course, the impact on northern Ohio has been disproportionate because that is where the bulk of manufacturing jobs are located. We went from a little over 1 million manufacturing jobs in January 1990 to 609,000 in November 2009. That was a big drop. Yet we've added more than 50,000 jobs since that point, an increase of 9%, but we still have to make up the other 31 and go beyond. And that is part of our challenge. According to the Federal Reserve, the financial crisis destroyed $7 trillion in household wealth in this country, a loss of 33% of home values on average. And according to Policy Matters Ohio, homeowners in Ohio currently have more than $16 billion in negative equity. We're still upside down. Wall Street's financial institutions have literally taken billions of dollars in lost equity from our region and other places, and they so callously used, in my opinion, the powers, Key Bank wasn't a part of it, and the institutions here that the American people allowed them to have. The Brookings Institution this week released a new study about the spread of poverty into suburban areas, and the 9th Congressional District and its adjacent districts are clearly the epicenter of this disturbing trend. One of the most exciting restorative initiatives in which I am engaged is something I call the Affordable High-Tech Agriculture Platform Development in urban food deserts. And Cleveland is making progress and can teach the nation, but we need to push the envelope on this. What do we do? The challenge involves spawning new types of food production platforms that can be placed in the lowest income neighborhoods to create new income opportunities, new income generation, and many food-related opportunities engaging the people who live there and the institutions who live there. High technology can take us there, and we're working with the Cleveland Jewish Federation to bring in an example from Israel of a gentleman who has managed to produce in very low-cost production platforms there, and I'm going to move him across this coast. And we are going to work together and develop a continuing relationship. They have no water, we have water. We can each learn from one another. So, the latest economic challenge has also revealed something special about our 9th Congressional District in our area, the resilience of our people. We're still here. You're still here. You're still trying. I'm still trying. We're still fighting for our future together. And that's why you took the time to be here today, to figure out how we connect all of this to be successful. We hear a lot of names used to describe our region: the North Coast, America's other coast, America's Fourth Sea Coast, the Fun Coast, Lake Erie South Coast, the Freshwater Coast. The most descriptive mantra today might be the resilient coast. The resilient coast. Despite the hand that was dealt to us, our region is fighting back. Yes, we need a helping hand from the political leadership in Washington and Columbus. Yes, the automakers and venture capitalists and other sectors like health, marine life, recreation, the arts are making serious investments in our region. But the public sector has to make commensurate investments in our social and economic capital if we are going to continue our comeback as a region. We need a major program of physical infrastructure improvement, a Marshall Plan for America's cities, particularly in the Great Lakes industrial heartland. This must be a drumbeat across the Great Lakes region and the St. Lawrence Seaway system, our main connect to the globe by water. And isn't it wonderful that President Obama has selected former Congresswoman Betty Sutton to be the new administrator for the St. Lawrence Seaway administration? She will help us. If we want to compete in the global economy, we need to make unprecedented investments in our transportation, energy, water, and yes, our human infrastructure. I'm doing everything I can as a ranking member of the Energy and Water Subcommittee to bring additional attention and needed dollars back to our region. In October, I will be hosting a regional economic summit along with Nortec here in the Cleveland area, bringing in officials from the various federal research laboratories to share with local business, innovators, companies, institutions here how they can benefit more in their work by connecting to our cutting-edge federal research in vital growth sectors, including energy, material science, biological, neuroscience, pharmacological and health, propulsion systems, laser and radiological technologies, and so much more. Next week, I'll be participating with Mayor Frank Jackson and officials of LEEDCO to announce a power pledge by which citizens can demonstrate their support for the Icebreak Wind Energy Project, 7 miles off the shoreline, the first major freshwater wind energy project in our nation. We have to think creatively about how to take advantage of our strengths as a region. We are playing in a very tough global economy that takes no prisoners and really is not actually fair to America that believes so much in free markets. We have so many closed markets that remain around the world. Our ability to succeed more quickly will depend on our collective will to forge partnerships, to transform investments and new opportunity here, the most sustainable place on earth. So, the state of the 9th Congressional District, we took a big hit, but we're still standing, and we're still fighting, and we're now coming back. What a wonderful opportunity is to represent this remarkable and rare place. Let us work together in our day and generation to perform something worthy to be remembered together. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to your questions.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we are listening to a Friday forum featuring the Honorable Marcy Kaptur, U.S. Representative for Ohio's 9th Congressional District. We will return momentarily for our traditional City Club questions. We encourage you to formulate questions for our speaker now and remind you that your questions should be brief and to the point. We welcome all of you here and those listening to us via broadcast on WVIZ PBS, 90.3 WCPN, and 104.9 WCLV IdeaStream, WTAM, or one of the many broadcast partners across the country. Broadcasts of the City Club are made possible by Cleveland State University and PNC. Our live webcast is supported by the University of Akron. While the City Club's political program is just ramping up, you can tell we're off to a good start here today. Actually, we've had a few events prior to today as well, but upcoming programs will include the Cleveland mayoral debate on September 18, Senator Olympia Snowe on September 20th, and Senator Sherrod Brown on November 1st. For more information about our upcoming forums, to make a reservation, or to order a CD or DVD of one of our many programs, please refer to our website, and that's www.cityclub.org. We welcome guests today at tables hosted by the law firm Baker & Hostetler, the law firm Kelfie, Case Western Reserve University, Cuyahoga Community College, the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party, the Greater Cleveland Partnership, Margaret Wong and Associates, and University Hospitals. Thank you all very much for your support. And now we would like to return to our speaker for a traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone here, including guests. Holding the microphones today are City Club Development Associate Mike Cromaldi, there's Mike, and City Club Program Director Carrie Miller, and there's Carrie. First question, please.
You mentioned the gerrymandered political districts that we have in the House of Representatives. Do you agree with this system? And if so, why? If you do not agree, why not? And what would you do to correct it?
Put me in charge. Well, the power to draw the districts is left in the states. And other states have figured out a way to create more competitive districts. Ohio has never chosen to do that in its legislature. So, for example, if one looks at a state like Iowa, they have much more competitive races inside the state, but each district is made just much more competitive. And that is one way you tend to get a more balanced delegation. Ohio, we sort of go from feast to famine. It's either one way or the other way, and this time is particularly mathematically driven to suppress the voices of so many Ohioans. So I would say that a petition in Ohio aimed at changing the law using some of the experience of other states that have succeeded in creating more competitive districts might be one way to go. Others have found a way to do that. Thank you, sir.
Madam Congresswoman, our question is about, it seems like our region has an identity crisis. As we have been publicized recently about the city of Detroit is going through bankruptcy, the state of Michigan has become a right-to-work state, and also we have urban school districts being closed by the state. Can you let us know what makes us different here in this in the Great Lakes region here, as far as in the Cleveland towards Toledo, which covers your district, and what makes us different, and how we will not face any of those type of circumstances in this area?
Well, how are we different from other parts of America? How are we different from?
But how we different? It seems like that the Michigan has been an area that they've been continuing to kick the can down the road. They never stopped and do something. Now they're suffering the consequences of kicking the can down the road. How can you let us know how we've been proactive to keep from going down that road as far as fiscal irresponsibility?
Right. I can't claim to be a complete expert on Michigan, but I do not blame just the officials of Detroit for the situation in Detroit, all right? If one looks at what's happened to Michigan, I mentioned how many jobs had been lost in Ohio in manufacturing. Michigan is no different. She lost between 33 and 48% of her jobs in the last 15 years in manufacturing. And if Michigan is a much less populous state than Ohio. So when they lose that amount of jobs, it's really hard to recover. You go up to the Upper Peninsula, there are some paper factories up there, there are some prisons. They've had trouble with economic development in the cold climates of Michigan. So most of their employment was centered mid-state down. And in addition to that, the financial crisis, Wall Street caused financial crisis, took billions and billions and billions of dollars out of Michigan. The collapse of the auto industry and its rebirth only made possible because of President Obama, and I think 234 members of the House, might be 243, but I think it's 234. Not a resounding majority, that's for sure, helped Michigan to gain some air in its lungs. But Detroit is a place that suffered many, many job losses as the auto industry over time in our country became less competitive, partly because of engineering, partly because of closed markets in Asia, and even in Europe, only allowing 10% of cars on their streets to come from any place else, and our parts suppliers to this day having trouble getting access into those markets. I could talk to you for 3 hours on trade. Invite me back on trade sometime. But Michigan has been manufacturing. Even its agriculture land can't compare to Ohio. I mean, we are just so rich here. Agriculture is our biggest business in this state. So Michigan has been burdened with a kind of a job mix that didn't insulate well in times of economic crisis, I think. And I read a lot of press, and they say, well, you know, the people in, all those officials in Michigan that worked in Detroit, they were all bad. You know, they actually paid the firefighters. They gave them a retirement plan that they can actually live on. Bad, bad. That's a bad idea. You know, and that they had health benefits, that if they got sick, they didn't have to die. Well, that's a bad idea, right? And so that they actually took care of people. You know, the people that worked as firefighters and who got injured. My brother is someone who's injured from working in, he wasn't a firefighter, but working on heavy fire equipment. We know what it's like to live as a family with someone who's hurt in the public sector and has to endure for years. We get that. So they took care of those folks in Michigan too. But they're trying to blame that segment as the whole problem. You know, and I don't really agree with that. I don't really agree. If I look at Michigan, I think the loss in the housing sector was like $187 billion. I might have a few billion off, but it was big, 180 billion in lost equity in the state of Michigan. The hole in Detroit on pensions and health plans is 6 billion. So you ask yourself, okay, so they're blaming the workers, and yeah, there were some corrupt officials there in Detroit, no doubt about that, and some of them are in jail. But overall, this is a region that has really been bludgeoned, like ours. And I'll share a little story with you as Midwesterners. You know, going out to California and just flying over the state and looking at the federal investment. I mean, you're talking trillions of dollars. Trillions, not billions, over a period of 50 years. Some of you, are you old enough to remember when Ohio had a tomato industry? Anybody old enough? Ohio, what's our state drink? Tomato juice, right. We used to have tomato, what? Somebody pulled a joke out there. They said something else. But Lake Erie water, probably. But tomato juice, right? So, but what happened to the tomato industry? We only have about 3% of the market left in tomatoes right now. It's all out there. I flew over it in water-short areas. And do you know how much the farmers out there have to pay to pay off their investment to tap into the fresh water provided by the government of the United States? What interest they pay on their loan to get that? 0%? 0% interest. 0. Do you know what that adds up to over 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? Time, you know what municipalities pay in order to tap into that water paid for by the federal government? Federal funds rate. You start thinking about the investments that have gone into other places, and then you look at the Great Lakes region and you say, hey, what's missing? I was being taken around by a part of our government some of you have never heard of. It's called the Bureau of Reclamation. They have responsibility for the provision of water and power to the 17 western states. We have nothing here to compare to it. Nothing. It does not exist. And so when our tomato industry evaporated, what did they go to? Water. Water, power, out west. You can see it. Last night I went to the store. I bought an Idaho peach. I thought, why is Idaho growing peaches? Ohio can grow peaches without irrigated water. Is this crazy? As they're cutting back water rationing all over that region. So we have to think about what instrumentalities do we have. One of the reasons I'm excited that former Congresswoman Sutton is head of the St. Lawrence Seaway Development Corporation, and I urge all lawyers, I see lots of smart lawyers here in the room, you go back to your offices and you pull out the authorizing authorities for the St. Lawrence Seaway Development Corporation and look at what's been done in the last 50 years to help with energy, the production of energy. We have it at Niagara and Buffalo, but few other places along the Seaway. And what do we have in that development authority that we could use or expand to even begin to compare with what these other states currently have, living with very rare water resources and rising costs just because of the nature of life there? And I'll tell you what, it's such a beautiful day in Ohio. You get up in San Francisco, it's cold. And it's damp. And I thought, boy, they did a great marketing job here. The Golden Gate, you know, what's that song? Sunny California, here I come. Remember that, all that? And everybody gets in their, you know, Oldsmobile and drives out to California. Well, the people don't swim in the water. It's too cold. We got beaches on Lake Erie. We got Edgewater Beach right here. I mean, our marketing isn't the best, so we can't get caught in the time warp of the last century. We have to think about, okay, what do we have to offer now with these new challenges facing us, and use the legal authorities we have or could expand in order to help our part of the Great Lakes, but the rest of the Great Lakes. And the biggest problem we have politically is Great Lakes members are all independent because they reflect the region they represent. And the region we represent is a more independent region because we've had to make our way in the free market. You say, what's she talking about? If you come to Washington, D.C., Eric Cantor, the Republican leader, well, he's number 2 on the Republican side of the aisle, when Eric Cantor, who votes against anything the government does, walks out his front door, he's got all these consulting firms, and he raises money from his, and they all do business with the federal government, and all he does is put his hand out, and he raises money. If you live in that government platform, life looks so different than if you live in Detroit or Cleveland or Toledo or Lorraine, and you have to actually fight your way in by creating a product or a process that can sell globally and try to break your way into markets. It's just such a different world. And so I don't fault Detroit. There are people there that didn't do their job and they made mistakes, but overall we live in a place that has had to compete in the free market, and it has been tough, and the government of the United States did not do what it should have done over the last 50 years to open closed markets. We have not had a president, Republican or Democrat, that really understood trade law and opened up closed markets. And I have seen so many companies die in this region, and it is so wrong, and I alone could not stop it. But unless we... That's a whole, I'll tell you a story. 1985, when I was a young congresswoman, and I traveled with a man named George Galster from a company called Champion Spark Plug, and which was in Toledo. It no longer is. And they were the best plugs in the world. And we met with all the automotive companies. We met with Prime Minister Nakasone, and I said, here's my deal. We will give you the plugs for free. You can put them in Toyota, you can put them in Nissan, you can put them in all your, just try them. Just try them. No thank you, no thank you, no thank you, because of the Keiretsu form of business relationships there where they do business with companies that they have control over, and it's more like a family business, right? Back in 1985, I think my first trip there was 85, we had 3%, any other country in the world's cars held 3% of the market share there. It's the same today. Second largest marketplace in the world for automotive and automotive parts. Now, so Detroit, is it only the fault of the people in Detroit? No. No. So I have sympathy there. In fact, I've been thinking about, could we make Detroit a federal district or something? You know, give them a 50-year loan to kind of get over it? I don't know. Why just take it out on them? Why take it out on the people who tried to make a difference? So I have my own point of view about sort of the inequalities that exist in terms of investment and sunk investment and practices both globally impacting places like Detroit, whose primary industry was one that couldn't get into closed markets around the world and have paid a very heavy price. Long answer. Okay, sorry. You hit one of my soft points.
Congresswoman, as we sit here in Cleveland today, in Washington, there are some very, very challenging questions facing the nation. Off the top of my head, certainly the debt ceiling is one. The budget for the next fiscal year is another. And yet we have a situation where the House of Representatives, of which you are a member, has a very sizable number of Republicans who have an automatic rejection of any proposal which the President makes. In view of that situation, and what you see as a member of the Congress, what do you think the possibilities are within the next couple of months of having some meaningful legislation enacted, particularly in those two areas of the debt ceiling and the budget for the next year?
I think any agreement is going to be very difficult. If we have a House that cannot even pass a farm bill and hacks it apart, that's a straw in the wind. One of my good friends, a Republican, just announced he was leaving. I was sorry to hear that. And he follows a line of others that are leaving, including the senator that's going to appear here. I heard Senator Olympia Snowe. I serve with Olympia in the House. She's an incredible human being, a very able public servant, and she can come to the middle of the aisle. She has her own views, but she can work with those on both sides of the aisle. Steve LaTourette just said, I tried to convert Steve LaTourette. We were on the elevator one night. I'll never know the truth. He'll never tell me the truth, but we were riding up on the elevator. We come off the floor, and it had been a bad day, and I said, Steve, I said, the doors closed. There was just the two of us. I said, and he looked really forlorn. And I said, how about coming over to our side, Steve? And you know what he did? I can't even repeat it. He went, he just went like that. He went like that. So I took that as a no. A few weeks ago, a great member from Alabama, Joe Bonner, who serves with us on defense appropriations, such a good man. I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but his word was his word, and you could find something you could agree on and work together. You could move a bill. You could move a bill forward and allow it to be amended on the floor, but at least you got action. I won't tell you which one of a number of these Republicans who have resigned, but one of them said to me, you know, Marcy, I used to be in the Tea Party caucus, but I quit the Tea Party caucus. I said, well, number one, I didn't know you were in it. I'm sorry to hear that. I said, but why did you quit it? He said, because no just can't be the answer. You can't just be against. You have to be for something. And one of the reasons, and I can't speak for Speaker Boehner, and he has not asked me to speak for him, that's for sure. But when he went to the White House and talked to President Obama and came back to the Congress on the budget about 1.5 years ago, he came back and he couldn't hold his word. His own caucus pulled the rug out from under him. You cannot function if you can't keep your word, if you can't hold a deal, whatever it is. And they seem to have a real problem with whatever they do in those rooms. And they argue and they come out, they can't get a majority of votes. So I am very skeptical. The best thing I can hope for, and you'd have to know some of the intricacies of the committees that I'm on, for me to say this is really hard, that we get something called a continuing resolution before October 1st, so we could keep the government running at this year's levels of appropriated dollars. I don't like to do that, because that's like a mindless, you just continue the past and you don't change anything. But without that, we can't pass our bills. Just before we left, the week before we left to come back home, our chairman of appropriations, we were moving through our bills. We have 12 bills we have to move to the floor every year. By Constitution, we're the only committee that must move bills every year. And he stopped midway in the morning. He didn't look that good that day. He really, and I thought maybe he just had a bad night or something, And in the middle of everything, he said, I am pulling off the floor. I'm ordering that the bill for transportation, that's money for the Interbelt, that's money for a lot of projects around our country, and housing in the dumpster in so many places. I'm pulling that bill because we can't get a majority. So he pulled that bill off the floor. We finished our markup, which meant nothing because we can't move our bills. If that bill couldn't move, these other bills can't move. And this is the chairman. And Hal Rogers of Kentucky, he made statement. I have never seen an appropriations chairman do that in my entire career in the Congress. I felt so sorry for him. He has tried so hard. He has tried so hard to maintain what we call regular order. So, sir, I can't predict what's going to happen. What I do know is that no Republican or Democrat should go unchallenged next year. That I know. It's too important to the country to break this logjam. And people have to think about what it means to the nation. We've got to get people in there who can reach a compromise and who just don't stop everything. And it is a real problem. It is, and think about this, for Ohio, the Speaker is from Ohio. But look at how his own Republicans from Ohio, when do they support him and when don't they support him? And then ask yourself about the Ohio Republican divide. And what does this do to the country? And think about what needs to be done in order to call their number. Here, I'll give you one example. I'll probably get myself in trouble. One of these fellas who always causes trouble, right? He shows up. He votes for something called sequestration, which are these just mindless cuts that we can cut from 16% of the budget and solve the deficit. He probably didn't pass math. But what does he do when he comes home? He goes to a defense plant in his district and gets his picture taken saying, this is a great plan. And I thought, wow, that takes a lot of brass. If you're going to be against something, be against something. Then there's another one who votes against the Army Corps of Engineers, votes against harbor dredging, wants to cut all these programs, comes home, does a press conference in this state, and says, Army Corps of Engineers, you have to put money here. Right here. I got flooding in my area. Well, of course you have flooding. You didn't do anything for 50 years. You have flooding there because you didn't meet your public responsibilities. Big press conference, picture on the front page. I thought, where's the Ohio Press? Where are they? These people, they shouldn't get the money. They voted no. If they believe no, don't ask for it. At least have the courage of your convictions, but then don't come back here and campaign and act like you didn't do it when you did. So people have to be challenged. I think we got to win with the people. I think we have to go back to the people, district by district by district, and people have to be held accountable for what they've done and the lack of progress that we're able to make as a, we've always been a forward-looking nation, not rear-view mirror. We've always done that, and we are at a standstill now. I keep wondering if it's just this group, or is this symptomatic of this generation, or is it symptomatic of the way we fund campaigns and who gets elected? I mean, what's this a function of? What's this a function of? Okay.
Ms. Margaret Wong.
Hello, Margaret.
And I
Thank you
do
for
have to
sponsoring the
admit that I used to be so mad at you when you defeat our own Dennis Kucinich.
Yeah.
Now we have healed, and a lot of us are falling in love with you. So I want to let you know that. So my question to you is, what's your take on the immigration reform on your part of the House, and also what's your personal take on immigration?
First of all, Margaret, thank you for everything you've done for Cleveland and this region and all the people that you've helped. Thank you very, very much. And I'm sorry. And I'm sorry that the Republican legislature of Ohio forced that race. Nothing is more unappealing than having to run against a colleague. That was no fun, all right? So I'm glad that's over. And what I would say that in terms of immigration, one of the statements that I've been making in many places is if you want to see the world, come to Cleveland. And I recently met with a group of civic leaders convened by Joy Roller and Albert Ratner about the immigration issue. And believe me, Margaret, I've listened to you very, very closely. And those who provided excellent information about and advice about immigration, probably better than even some of the language in some of the House bills. Okay? And I don't think, I'll be honest, I don't think passing it with the current membership of the House, I don't think passing immigration is going to be easy. I don't think any of the bill sponsors think it's going to be easy. The Tea Party obviously is calling the shots. They're the default set of votes in the Republican caucus. But I still think that there's some movement. Congressman Goodlatte, who's been placed in charge of this in the House, is trying to make proposals on immigration. I don't necessarily agree with them, but there's some movement on the Republican side. And I've already spoken with Congressman Gutierrez, in fact, invited him here to Cleveland. And he's the chief author of the House bill on my side of the aisle, and about Cleveland's idea for an immigration hub. He never thought of it. I thought, oh, great. Giving him something he didn't have, somebody who's worked, he's worked on this issue for a long time. So I think that we have to keep looking for provisions that should be in the bill. We have to keep working it through, and we have to help to find a way to make it easier for people to unite their families and to deal with a regular process of immigration for our country. There's a lot of momentum. There isn't a day that goes by that there isn't a hearing or a convening. There's a lot of pressure. President Obama is trying. Our Democratic leadership is trying. So I'm optimistic, but I do see we have a group of people who can't agree on a lot of things. I have a statement I also want to make to you, which relates back to our trade agreements, because the largest category of those who need to be regularized are from Mexico, all right, if you really look at the numbers. And back in 1993, when Congress debated something called NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, some of us worked very hard to defeat it. And we worked very hard to defeat it because it didn't have in it several important provisions. I won't go through all of them, but one of the most important ones had to do with agricultural adjustment in Mexico. And what happened when that was passed, and I do believe some people wanted to create a landless class of peasants across this continent to exploit them. And what happened in Mexico, over 2 million farm families who used to be part of these co-ops, they called them ejidos, they farmed. Their land literally was taken out from under them. They had no place to go. I'm sure some of you have visited the squatter settlements in northern Mexico. I have, more than once. And these were people that used to eke out a living growing white corn. And pretty soon they had no place to take their corn anymore, and in fact no place to grow it. They are hungry. And if you look at who's coming over our borders, where are they coming from? And what are they willing to do just to eat? So I view the immigration bill from my perspective as one to compensate for what was not done in 1993. And one of the thoughts I've had, and I've been talking to Congressman Gutierrez about, is the average age of farmers in our state and country is about 60 to 62 years of age. We are going to need farmers for the future in this country. Maybe there's a way, somehow, legislatively, to allow some of our land that just is sitting fallow and no one is farming it. Maybe we could figure out some kind of an agricultural adjustment provision in the immigration bill, because many of these families want to farm. That's what they did. And if you look at the growing rates of farm ownership in states like Canada, or states like Michigan, excuse me, I'm trying to make Canada a state, but I'm not working. There's a lot we can do in the immigration bill, I think, to redress past grievances as well as help position our country for a better future. And we'd best be about that task. Okay? So we'll continue to work with a consortium that's here that deals with that issue. And I thank Cleveland for your leadership. Are you all familiar with what the Immigration Hub is? That there'd be special incentives that would be offered for individuals who would move here. Interestingly, when I was out in California, I had dinner with dear friends that I've known for a number of years, because many people know I have a special affinity for Eastern and Central Europe, which was the home of my ancestors and many others here in the room today. And there's a great book, by the way, great book that's been written called The Bloodlands by Dr. Timothy Snyder from Yale. It's a must-read for anybody that cares about that part of the world. But anyway, I was meeting with this family, and the husband said to me, and they're immigrants, he said, I read that in Detroit you can get a good house for $1,000. Is that true? And doesn't know America that well. Living in California, I thought, this is telling me something. Maybe Cleveland and Lorraine and Sandusky and Toledo, maybe we ought to have a real estate campaign working with our land trusts and advertising in these places and say, just like the gold rush, come to Cleveland. We have these houses for sale, and let me tell you, with the immigrant population, they don't have a lot of money other than those that got those visas, where you have to pay a lot of money to get here. But the average, they're struggling. So affordable housing, and this man is in construction. He can fix up a house. And I thought, oh, those are the kind of people we want in our area. And, to farm, to build, to raise our children, just interesting. So I thought, I've got to talk to the movers and shakers here and think about advertising our real estate in ways that reach some of these new populations that are earning money, but they can't afford to live in California. So let's take some of them.
Congresswoman, thank you so much for your wonderful record supporting fair trade. And my question is, do you anticipate fast track being brought up before the House for a vote this fall in anticipation of the TPP?
Okay, many people are asking, what's the TPP? The TPP is the Trans-Pacific Partnership following on other trade agreements like NAFTA, CAFTA, China PNTR. These are trade agreements that come to us negotiated by the executive branch without the opportunity to amend. And I'll tell you what, I don't like this at all. And it's happened before, and we come up with agreements that are very harmful to our country in the end, economically harmful. It helps some companies, but the net is a net negative. All you have to do is go to our trade, if you go to the trade balances, and you look every year what's been happening, there isn't a single year for any one of the agreements that I've mentioned where the United States has ever had a positive trade balance. They told us we would have billions of dollars of trade balance with Mexico. We've been in deficit over $1 trillion since that was enacted in 1993. Jobs move from here down there. In fact, there's a street, I was in one Maquiladora, it's called Calais, Michigan, Calais, Ohio. I thought, hey, wait a minute here. And I see Trico windshield wiper factory from New York down there, you know, and you're going to say, hey, wait a minute here. This is not a level playing field. So I do not support fast track because that is an expression that means no amendment. And I think the House should, the executive branch always says, oh, well, we can't allow you to amend it because we negotiated it. And then we'd have to break our word to the other country. I say, so what? Go back and renegotiate. So don't give us the opportunity to amend. And the Trans-Pacific Partnership, there's a lot of complexities I won't go into, but I mentioned Japan's closed market even until today. And other closed markets. They told us when the Korean trade deal passed that we would have sold 50,000 cars. We haven't. We haven't done that. There's Kias all over the street here. So this affects the economy. And I'm not against Kia, don't get me wrong. I just want them to buy our cars too. Our cars too. So my position on that is pretty clear. And I think I'm being given the signal here. I just want to say, I see Stu Garson sitting in front of me here, and very well known to all of you, I'm sure, but also chairman of the Democratic Party here in Cuyahoga County. When I was younger, I never thought it would be possible for this part of Ohio to be linked, the eastern and the western. It was a political impossibility. But I can't tell you how grateful I am. I have met the most wonderful people here in the new part of the district, and we are about great tasks together. And I don't know completely where the road will lead, but I'll tell you what, it really, really adds strength to the North in ways that I had never anticipated. And we are going to be a part of this team that is going to lift this part of the state up, as it surely should be. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to spend with you today.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we've been listening to a Friday Forum featuring the Honorable Marcy Kaptur, U.S. Representative for Ohio's 9th Congressional District. Thank you very much, Congresswoman Kaptur. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.